This spider spins the web from itself. So many of us have a saying, it's not the man, it's the plan. It's not the white man, it's the system. But the system came from a man. So don't ever say it's not the man, it's the plan. The plan came out of a man. Now, we used to sing a song in church. The devil is mad, and I'm so glad because he missed the soul that he thought he had. Now, the enemy of God is always working to trap you. Not just you, me, us. And once he gets you in the web of his machination or scheme or plan, he moves quickly to you to inject you with a word that has a function like the enzyme that breaks down your spiritual form. Listen, listen. See, so many of you, you're really good people no matter how ugly or bad you act. You're really good at the core. But you get trapped. And what traps you, what tricks you, what grabs you that allows Satan to get a hold on you? He comes after you in your own desires. I'm a beautiful young woman, she says, but I don't have a man, she says. So I'm looking hard. But I may not know what I'm looking for, but I know it's a man. See, Satan always appears in the form of what you desire. And so does God. Quran, I'm quoting now. And God said to Mary, and you shall conceive, and it will be a man-child, and he will be a prophet. She said, but how can I when a man has not yet touched me? And Allah said, that is easy for me. All I have to say is be, and it is. And in another part of the Quran it says, and we sent her our spirit, and it appeared unto her in the form of a well-made man. So if God can send his spirit to fulfill the desire of a righteous woman, then the enemy can send his spirit in the form of a man to fulfill negative purposes for your life. And this is why the Bible says you have to become wise to be able to discern the Spirit. Because the outward look is not important. It's the spirit that you must discern, because Satan, the book says, is able to transform himself into an angel of light. Well, now, if Satan can do that, then he or she can appear to you in whatever form will please you. I am a singer of songs, a writer of music, but I need a publisher. I need an agent. I need a manager. I'm a beautiful young lady. I have a nice form. I'm tall and I'm thin, and I would like to be a model. But you're looking for somebody now to help you fulfill your desire. I'm a mathematician. I'm an engineer. I just graduated from Morehouse and I'm ready for a job. Satan can come as an employer. You know, I've been looking at my TV and I saw a beautiful Mitsubishi, or beautiful BMW, beautiful Mercedes, beautiful Cadillac. Now you want something. Now the question is, how do you get what you want and at what price? How do you get what you want and at what price? Now, see, when Satan is after you, you got to give up something. Here's a young man, his young lady, she's a virgin. She meets a nice young man on the campus, and she likes him, she's attracted to him, he's attracted to her. But look, you know, so many girls are attracted to me, sister. What, are you going to give it up? Because I ain't got no time to waste on a girl that ain't giving it up. Oh my God, I'm thrown into a dilemma. I like that boy, but I'll disappoint my mommy, my daddy. Oh, but damn, I mean, I'll think about it. See, now you think that that young man is your friend, but he's spinning a web. And just reverse it. Sometimes you see you want a woman. See, but the web starts spinning. You say you're a Muslim. Yeah. Well, brother, bring that paper. What's the name of that paper? The Final Call? Well, honey, I'm calling. And if you respond, it just might be your final call. See? You just come out of college. You go back and you see your friends. They're happy to see you. You're clean. You want to celebrate. Hey, man. And this is your buddy. You grew up with him, and he didn't go to college. He's still on the corner. You left him on the corner. You find him on the corner. But he got an 8-ball in his pocket. How you doing, man? Look, I I know you got your degree, man. Congratulations, brother. But look, I'm gonna get high, and I want you to try this with me. It ain't gonna hurt you, man. It ain't gonna do nothing. You're just gonna feel real good. Now that's your friend. You grew up with. That's your buddy. You went to school together. But here comes Satan in the form of your friend, spinning a web. You may have 3 minutes to say, no, thank you, brother. I'll see you at another time. No, thank you, my friend. I'll see you at another time. See, don't tell me that you want to be righteous hanging out with people who don't want what is right. If you want to be right, hang out with those who want right and you'll stay right. But if you hang out with the wicked, it won't be long before the spider has spun its web. And then with a few words, they break you down, your resistance is gone. See, that's what happens to virgins. Their resistance break down, but it starts from within. It's an urge. You know, you're natural. You're a natural young lady. You're a natural young man. I feel these hormones, they fired up. Damn, I want to try this thing. But I'm scared. Because see, maybe I'll get pregnant. Well, I met a nice young lady. She's my friend too. And she wants me to try sex. But I know I won't get pregnant with her. Spinning the web. And you end up in a lesbian relationship. You're safe. You can't come home pregnant. But you're broken down on the inside now. And the natural is becoming unnatural. Jesus, the greatest of the prophets, well, yes, greatest of the prophets, because as Messiah, he's greater than a prophet. If you study the Quran carefully, the Messiah did things that prophets don't generally do. He made the blind see by God's permission. He made the deaf hear by God's permission. He raised the dead to life by God's permission. Those are Allah's attributes. So when a human being is doing what only God can do, then God is present in that human being, working through that human being, greater than a prophet. See, look. A prophet speaks of God in the absence of God. The Messiah is not only speaking of God, but God is present. That's why the Emmanuel, God is with us. Present. It's a big difference. Big difference. So, Jesus was a king, but he didn't have no kingdom. Not yet. See? Now, if Jesus was so beloved of God, but he had to be tried, then how can you escape? How can I escape? How can we escape? Satan walked right up to Jesus. Hey, come on up on this mountain with me. Take a walk with me. See, you got to walk with your trial. Come on up on the mountain with me. Look out over there. Look at all those cities, Jesus. I'm master over those cities. Jesus said in his mind, yeah, temporarily. He said, if you bow down to me, I'll give you all of that. Jesus, in his mind, said, yeah, it's coming to me anyway. I'm just going to wait on my Father. Then he said, get thee behind me, Satan. See, now, some of us want things so bad that we compromise things of value to get something that is in our minds very valuable but less valuable than what you gave up. See, a fair exchange is when you give up something to get something equal to what you gave up. But when you give up principle and then lose your soul in the process, then whatever you get in that transaction does not benefit you. It could be a beautiful home, but you won't have any peace in it. It could be a nice car. It could be the man that you thought was the man of your dreams, or the woman that you thought was the one you were looking for all your life. But if you have to compromise your principles to hold on to nothing and give up virtue for nothing, then you don't rejoice in the bargain that you made that day. But Allah says in the Quran, rejoice in the bargain that you have made this day. For I have given you the garden in exchange for your lives. Ooh. Then the God says, rejoice in that bargain because your life was worthless. But I asked you to give me your worthless life. And in the place of that, I will give you the paradise. So when you make that bargain gives you joy. Now, why did this subject come to me in the middle of the night for you? I can't answer. All I know is that that's what I was supposed to begin to talk on to you. And each one of you know in your own heart why I'm saying what I'm saying. Okay, now, I'm not patting myself on the back at all. I'm a brother like you, struggling like you to be and live up to my word that I gave to Allah and his messenger. That my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, and my death is all for God. I said that 50 years ago, and I'm still striving to make my word my bond. So I am locked in struggle just like you. But when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked me to make the national broadcast during his time among us, and for 6 years I did it. For the first 3 years I wrote every word, and some of the brothers in this room were with me in those early days when I would write every word, weigh every word, and bring a 29-minute, 30-second broadcast. But after doing that for 3 years, I was with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad one day, and he said, "Oh, brother, you don't have to do that. Just go stand up and let God speak through you." Now, I didn't come before you with any notes. I just asked brother for the Holy Quran. And I've been talking to you now for about 35 or 40 minutes. And everyone in this audience already knows that there was something you were looking for, something you needed, and something you received. Now, I am grateful to Allah to be used as an instrument. I am not puffed up with pride or arrogance, because I know I'm just a servant. I'll be here for a short time, and then I'm gone the way of all flesh. But while I'm here, I'm honored to be his servant and to help you and our people and humanity see the greatness of God and the greatness of yourselves when you are in submission to God. Now, I'm going to continue with this subject, and I'm going to read now from the Holy Quran, but this is going to reinforce what you heard that may have touched you personally, because it's all designed to heal you. It's all designed to strengthen you. It's all designed to make you what you know you already are, a better person, but not living in your dreams, manifesting your greatness by your surrender to your Creator. Okay. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told me one day, and some in this audience can bear witness that they've heard him say this, that the FBI was looking for him because Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor, and they wanted to arrest Elijah Muhammad because they could not afford to have this man on the street preaching to black people while America was trying to prosecute a war, because they have always wanted to use you in wartime and at election time. At any other time, do the best you can. So Elijah Muhammad, they had come for him. I think he said he was in Baltimore, and the enemy got to where he was, and he said he walked down the stairs right past them. That's right. And they saw him and didn't see him. like the time that I was overseas on a world tour, and they had said that anybody that visited or talked to or did any business with Muammar Gaddafi should be arrested and put in jail for 10 years. And I had a vision of what they were going to do to Brother Gaddafi, so I didn't care what they said. I got on a plane with Brother Sharif, Brother Salim, and Brother Sheikh Tijani and Rufai. And we got on a jet, and a Russian jet, and flew to Tripoli, Libya, to warn Brother Gaddafi of what America was planning. The Secretary of State was George Shultz. And I think the Attorney General, what was his name at that time? I can't remember, but he's the one that said Farrakhan should go to jail. So somebody, while I was overseas, sent me a document that they would be watching me for me at every port of entrance into America. And I got in, walked right past them, walked past them, and was in the country nearly a week before anybody outside of my family and Brother Akbar knew that I was back in the country. So when God wants to hide you, He can hide you in the open. That's right. So the messenger said he walked right by them, and he got on a train going toward Philadelphia. And you know, a beautiful sound on a train is the tracks. And he said, while the sound of the tracks was coming up in his ear, he heard the voice of Master Farad Muhammad saying to him, quote, "Do men think that they will be left alone on saying, 'We believe,' and will not be tried? And indeed, we tried those before them, so Allah will certainly know those who are true, and He will know the liars." Now, that's all that he heard, but it was enough. When he got to Philadelphia, he made up his mind. He knew he was being tried, so he was going to go back and face his trial. And now they have a picture of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in handcuffs between two FBI agents being taken away to prison by order of President Roosevelt. It was an executive order signed that he had to go. Now, we may face something like that today, because the war that is going on now is going to get deeper and wider, and my voice and the voice of others, they will try to silence. Though I am not afraid of any of that. That does not bother me. If the president signs an executive order saying Farrakhan has to be arrested, well, that's what he said. We'll just see how that plays out. My point is, no one who believes in God can escape being tried.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his servant and messenger. I greet you, my beloved brothers and sisters, in the greeting words of peace. We say it in the ancient tongue of Arabic. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the Image and Nation show. My name is Brother Leo Muhammad, and sitting alongside me is my beloved wife and friend, Sister Claudia Muhammad.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I greet you all in the greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum. Welcome again to another edition of the Image and Nation show. Thank you all so much for your time and tuning in, and thank you for some of you for your blessings that you sent in the comments. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I pray that you are all receiving and all of us being grateful for the countless blessings from Almighty God Allah, the many countless favors that Allah is giving us today. So we thank Allah for that.
That's right. Praise be to Allah. Dear family, don't forget at this time to let us know where you are, where you're tuned in from in the world. We are always interested in hearing from our brothers and sisters, from our family, and from those of you who tune in, whereabouts you're able to get the Imagination show. Also, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Imagination show, because it helps the show to grow. It helps the show to be recognized far and wide. And so, we really encourage you to hit that like button and to also make that subscription. It's free of charge, and be a part of the Imagination family. Dear brothers and sisters, we are thankful and forever grateful for your coming and being with us each and every week. We recognize some of the names already, regulars who are with us on the Imagination show. And as Sister Claudia and myself, we always say we don't take it for granted. And we are very, very happy to see you. And we pray that something that we share with you is of benefit to you, that it helps you, because the whole idea of the Imagination show is to really spark the imagination of the human being, to spark the concept of going beyond that which this world would have us confined to, so that we can envisage and see something greater, bigger, and a different reality that we can conceive of in our own minds. The faculty of imagination, hence our name, Image and Nation. The faculty of imagination is truly awesome. If you can see it, if you can conceive it in your mind's eye, you can bring it into fruition, you can bring it into reality. And so, dear family, this is what this show is all about. So we say welcome to episode 139 of the Imagination show. Today is Thursday, July 18th, 2024. The time is running and passing and running. Today's title is Escaping the Web of Western Deceit. Escaping the Web of Western Deceit. That is what we want to talk about in our brief time together this evening. And just suffice to say, dear family, that this web that we are talking about this evening is very real. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, for those of you who are listening for the 30 minutes or so before Sister Claudia and myself came on, the minister touched on some elements of that web and touched on the reality of how so many of us, if we're not mindful, if we're not careful, how we can become ensnared, how we can become trapped in a world like this, because they really do weave
Mhm.
a very, very deceptive web. It's a web of lies and deception, and it is critically important that you and I are aware of why, as a people, we suffer so much. It is not just because of our own inadequacies or our own negligence or our own inability to see a way forward. We have to appreciate that this Satan is real. And we're not talking about some entity under the earth with red or black skin and a pitchfork and horns and a tail. There is no such Satan, dear family. The Satan we are talking about is a Satan on top of the earth who we see his works on a daily basis, who we encounter on a daily basis. This is the reality of this Satan. He is very, very real, and he makes minions of little devils who carry out his functions. And many of us, if we are not careful, are in danger of being devils carrying out Satan's instructions, Satan's orders, because we are ignorant of his identity and his reality and how he operates in this world. And so, dear family,
And excuse our spelling mistake.
oh, what did I spell wrong? Deceit?
Deceit, yeah.
Okay,
E
well,
before the I.
yes, I think I spelled it correct in other places,
Yes.
but sometimes I'm kind of rushing, dear beloved family, and we do make mistakes. But, and I'll say this, any mistakes, they belong to me. They certainly do not reflect on the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad as taught and exemplified by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We do our best, but sometimes our best is just not good enough, and we will make mistakes. And so we do say to you, bear with us as we attempt to regurgitate some of the teachings and as we attempt to make some sense of a world that has been deliberately fashioned in such a way that it's a spider's web of lies and deceit. And this is what we attempt to maneuver our way through, whatever the subject matter might be. That's what we are confronted with today. So, dear family, it'll be a little bit different today. Oftentimes I put words on the screen and then I repeat those words. Today, I'm not really using the words. I'm just using some images, some videos, a few videos today to really just emphasize the point that I'm trying to make. And what I'm really looking at is the fact that we're in a time, I don't know if you can remember back in 2023, I think I did a series of lectures, talks on the Imagination Show entitled Africa Must Be Free by 2023. And this process is a process that has begun. Our African brothers and sisters, many of the young people are currently in the process of freeing themselves and freeing the continent from the grip of Western imperialism, Western colonization, Western exploitation, and all the rest of the machinations that these Western powers have been employing on that continent since 1884, 1885, at the Berlin Conference, when they came together, European nations came together with a determination to cut the continent of Africa up like a cake and share it out among themselves. And we are still in 2024 suffering the legacies of those false constructs, those false borders, and those carved up territories, we're still suffering to this very day the legacy of that encroachment and that possession, that colonization by the Europeans, by the Western Europeans, and we are fighting to extricate ourselves from this web and from this grip. That's essentially what we are looking at this evening, looking at our brothers and sisters on the continent. I'm sure that you should be familiar by now with the fact that many of our young people in the country called Kenya are on the rise. They call them the Gen Z generation, Generation Z. They are standing up and saying that they've had enough of the corrupt governments that take their orders from Washington, take their orders from Westminster, take their orders from Paris, take their orders from Brussels and other parts of the European world, and these governments get ensnared and caught up in the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank borrowing money that keeps the countries and the continent indebted to these Western governments, and keeps the African populations underdeveloped and unable to go and do for self because of this reliance and this dependency on their former colonial masters and our former slave masters. And so, dear family, it is important to appreciate that until Africa is free, we're not free here in the Western world. And until we're free, Africa is not free. We are a global family. We are Africans in the diaspora. We are original men and women whose origin is that continent, whose origin is in fact the planet Earth. But, you know, we have been under the rule of a stranger in a strange land for a long time. And the African continent didn't escape. Not only did they take us out in chains and keep us in that bondage for 400 plus years, and we're still, if you understand and see how so many of us in North America, here in the UK, in the Caribbean, and other parts of the world, like Brazil, Black people are still fighting for some semblance of justice and equality and reparations and so on and so forth. We can go on and on about the inequalities that we face and under which we exist in a world like this. That is still a reality. That is still an ongoing situation. But our brothers and sisters on the continent, they face really similar situations and realities, but the trickery involved and the way in which the former colonizers have set up their systems and left their systems in place with puppets to carry out their will is really something that has to be overcome. And today we have some, young people in the streets of the African continent, and also some young people and some people who are awake in that continent, who are now moved into areas of government and governance, and they are fighting to make the changes necessary to come away from that colonized mind and that colonized system in order that Africa can actually be free. And so that's what we want to look at this evening, family. And so we ask you to bear with us and follow along as best you can with what it is that we want to share, and we will try our best to break it down so that it can be understood about exactly where we are at the present time in July of 2024.
France has had a long and complex relationship with its former African colonies. Many of these colonies gained independence in the 1950s and 1960s, but France still holds significant political, economic, and military ties in her former African colonies.
And you see, according to the narrator, you know, we gained our independence in the 50s and the 60s, but nonetheless, he goes on to say that France still has all of these political ties. Well, that means that we didn't get independence then. That's the point. You see, there's a lot of, even in the narration, you have to be careful of the doublespeak, because on the one hand, they'll tell you that, oh, you're independent, but in the next breath, you know, we are still somehow caught up in the sphere of the former colonizers' influence. Well, that's not independence. We're either independent or we're not. You see, we're either free or we're not. The same way that France maintains these ties is the same way in which Britain has maintained her ties with her former colonized people by claiming now a commonwealth, and, you know, have so many of these African leaders, these Black leaders, you know, actually celebrating being a part of a commonwealth. The question we always ask is, who's common and who's got the wealth? You see, because it's a trick. And, you know, instead of us wanting to separate ourselves completely and go and do for ourselves, we maintain these ties, not appreciating that it's just another way keeping us in under their influence. Here you got a so-called African leader, you know, inspecting French troops or a French band playing music to make him feel like he's somehow important. And remember, this is also a part of what they do in the sense of, you know, they take care of a leader, a so-called leader, his family, and some immediate cronies, while the masses of our people oftentimes live in poverty and subjugation.
Colonies. France has intervened militarily in several conflicts over the past few decades, often to support governments friendly to French interests. However, there have been discussions in recent times about France's potential backscaling from its involvement in certain parts of Africa, such as the Sahel, West, and Central Africa. Under President Emmanuel Macron's leadership, the French government has sought to redefine its role and presence in Africa since 2017. In today's video, we shall be looking at how France is gradually withdrawing from African affairs, and this is characterized as a shameful exit by many observers. Any suggestion of Macron leaving Africa in shame implies a significant geopolitical and diplomatic crisis. France's departure from African countries is also related to failed military interventions, political fallouts, or tensions with African leaders. In February, President Macron tasked former Minister Jean-Marie Bockel with working out the new modalities of the French military presence in African countries. In this plan, Paris planned to keep around 100 troops in Ivory Coast on the southern coast of West Africa, down from 600 troops, and around 300 personnel in Chad, in north-central Africa, down.
Just think about this, you know. France plans to keep troops in a former colony down from 600 to 100 or whatever. So America's got troops there, you know, in the hundreds. Britain has got troops there. So many of these colonial countries have got their troops on the African continent. But just think about it. Ask yourself, why? Why do you have to have your soldiers there? And again, part of the pretext is that they're there to fight against terrorism, against these terroristic groups that have somehow formulated themselves on the African continent. But if the truth be known, oftentimes it's these very troops, it's these very countries, these European countries that are actually fueling the terrorism, actually supplying the weapons to the so-called terrorists, and basically keeping terrorism going within the country in order to keep the country destabilized, in order that they can continue to take resources out of that country. And the Africans can never, ever have any type of stability whereby they can actually develop and build their countries. I want you to think about, for instance, you know, because I'm sure all of you have heard over the years, you know, the talk about aid to Africa. You know, there've been aid in Africa for so many years, all this aid money going into Africa. But how many of us appreciate that for every dollar that goes into the continent, there's probably $10 coming out, if not 10 times that amount coming out? Because that's the reality, dear brothers and sisters. There've been aid in Africa, but when you consider the underdevelopment of the continent, what kind of aid are you actually giving? Because if I remember rightly, you know, Germany was the instigator, according to the way in which the history is written. They were the instigator of the Second World War, and they attacked and did a lot of damage in Europe, and ultimately they were defeated by the Allied powers, you know, Britain, America, Russia was a significant, the Soviet Union was a significant part of the Nazis being defeated, and that country was wrecked. But according to my understanding, Germany has been completely rebuilt. Germany is, you know, one of the shining countries in Europe today because it was rebuilt, even though it was the instigator of a war that killed millions of human beings. But yet Europe could find it in itself. America could find it in itself. They could all rally around and help to rebuild Germany. Britain was bombed and had a lot of damage done, you know, in the Battle of Britain and all the rest of the bombs that Hitler and the Nazis sent over into this part of the world. But yet it's been rebuilt and it's, you know, functioning very, very well. Well, Africa hasn't had all of those bombs dropped on it, but why is it that Africa seems to really struggle to develop and to be on the same level as these European nations, especially when you consider the type of resources that Africa has within its soil? You know, the oil and the gold and the diamonds and the manganese and the coltan, and you name it, we can just go on and on. Everything, in fact, that the West needs today for its own development can be found in the African soil. And so you know, and you should know, that there's something else going on other than genuine aid, why they're there. And if, again, when you listen to this narrative, the way so far he's been talking as if, well, you know, Macron and France, they're basically limiting their activities now on the continent. But you will see in a second, you'll have to get to the reality. It's because they're actually being pushed out. It's because the Africans are waking up and they're saying, listen, get out. We don't want you here, because they're finally coming to the realization of what the French presence really means.
1,000. In February 2023, President Macron reiterated a noticeable reduction of French troop presence in Africa as anti-French sentiments kept running high in some former colonies. Russia has...
Anti-French sentiments, huh? Now, dear family, I hope you can see in the image there on the screen, young brother, the youngest president in the world at the present time. I think he's only 35, 36 years old. This is Ibrahim Traore, who is the current head and leader in Burkina Faso. And, you know, one of the real inspirational lights of the African revolution that's taking place now, where our people are saying enough is enough, and they want to actually have genuine sovereignty and independence. But I point him out brothers and sisters, because, you know, a significant part of why I wanted to do this subject this evening is to really emphasize something, which is the tenacity of the enemy. And it's to really appreciate that we can't afford to get too happy just because we see somebody trying to push back against the tide of injustice and the tide of inequality that has been the prevalent reality for so long, for so many years. And finally, we see this young man who is willing to actually put his life on the line and fight back, because the enemy is so vicious. The enemy is so wicked that our brother is not the first who has tried and attempted to free his people, free his country, free the continent, and to come with so many solutions in the form of unity with the African continent coming together, that understand that whenever the enemy sees this type of movement, this type of leader, this type of initiative, they move to destroy such persons. And I guess the point I want to make is they are very patient, talking about the enemy here, and they don't mind if it takes years. And we must not think that this enemy is the type of enemy who's going to go quietly. Even though he may look like he is left, he never leaves. He's always working behind the scenes to try to undermine whatever it is that we are doing in order to rebuild ourselves. It's just, you know, it's one of these things. One of our wonderful teachers in the Nation of Islam, Dr. Minister Sister Ava Muhammad, I heard her say one time in a lecture, Sister Claudia, it just really kind of like hit me hard when she talked about our lack of killer instinct and how we will oftentimes knock an enemy down, and then we kind of get happy and not realizing that, like a Terminator, this enemy is going to get back up again unless we finish the enemy at that moment in time. You know, do you understand, family, that if somebody comes with a gun to try to kill you, and you are blessed by Almighty God Allah to take that gun from the enemy, you can't then hold that one at gunpoint and call the police, oh, come and take him away. You kill that demon who was planning to kill you. If you're able to take it from him, you think you're going to leave that one standing? No, brothers and sisters, we got to understand that, you know, this lack of a killer instinct, this lack of an ability to end the enemy's reign of terror once and for all is a significant part of our downfall, you see, because we keep on expecting him to behave like us. We keep on expecting him to have the degree or the level of humanity that we have. He hasn't got that. You're not dealing with that type of enemy. You are dealing with a natural born killer whose nature it is to just kill Black people and to rule and to dominate over Black people. Don't make a mistake, brothers and sisters, in thinking that, you know, you can leave this man after, you know, he has done such evil over such a protracted period of time, and he's just going to go quietly away, and you're not going to hear from him again, and you're not going to see him trying in other ways and in other arenas to come back and undermine and ultimately destroy what it is that you're trying to put together. This is a message that I wanted to really convey this evening. This brother here, he has to be absolutely protected by the Burkina Faso people. He has to absolutely be relentless in his ability to make the changes in his country that he wants to bring about, and also in terms of the bigger picture, to really convey that message of unity across the continent and to try to strike alliances with as many other like-minded leaders on the continent. And there has to be a movement, a revolutionary movement that sweeps the African continent, dear family. You can't have in one section a revolution taking place of this nature, and then in another section, business as usual, where they're now inviting the West in to come and set up camp to then use that other African nation, that other African territory as a launching pad to go and attack the revolution. That type of behavior has to come to an absolute end, because this is what's happened historically. This is what the enemy has been able to enact on us through his mode of operation called divide and rule. He has always been able to use one African against another, one black person against another. You see, and this has to end, brothers and sisters. We have to redevelop that mantra, that saying that our great brother, the writer Alexander Dumas, who wrote The Three Musketeers, he said, one for all and all for one. All for one and one for all. This is the spirit and the attitude that we have to have. And we got to begin to recognize our brothers and sisters wherever they are found on this planet.
Seized this opportunity and is vying for greater influence in Africa. France is still planning to reduce its military presence in West and Central Africa to around 600 troops, and this is in line with President Macron's plans to limit the French military footprint in the region. According to a plan currently under discussion with African partners, France intends to drastically limit its so-called prepositioned forces in Africa. It is said that France will keep only around 100 troops in Gabon and Central African Republic, down from 350 today, and around 100 in Senegal in West Africa, down from 350 as well. The reduced French presence in Africa will be periodically expanded based on the needs of local partners. Until 2 years ago, in addition to around 1,000...
Their troops will be, expanded from time to time based on the needs of their local partners, as if there is any genuine partnership between the French and the Africans. There's no genuine partnership there, dear family. These are exploiters, okay? These are people who have shown through history. And, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that history is best qualified to reward our research. We should do our history. We should do our history lesson and understand that historically, these people have never been our friend. So what makes us think that today, all of a sudden, in Message to the Black Man, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that it's hypocritical, his offer of friendship. It's fake, it's false. And Africans have got to wake up and realize this. And too many of us are in love with this enemy. We love the enemy. What does it say in our lessons? Why do we love the devil? Because the devil gives us nothing. That's why we love him. Imagine that. We love the devil because the devil gives us nothing. And if he gives us anything, he gives us his own personality, his own mind, his own wicked mentality. You see? And we got to stop this, you see, brothers and sisters, because the corruption of our people goes very deep. I mean, really goes very, very deep. Too many of our people have been caught up in this world and have become corrupt as a result. And it's very, very difficult to now clean ourselves up, but we've got to do it. And we've got to be vigilant. Those of us who are trying to get clean, we've got to be extremely vigilant against those who are still wallowing in the filth and the mire and love it. You see, because some of us, we just love corruption. Just understand this. This is real. This is real. You see, and that corruption and that nastiness causes some to literally sell out our own people and will kill our own people on behalf of an enemy. Imagine, just think about that. Think about those in our ranks who are so wicked. And, you know, I've said this before and I'll say it again. See, those of us in the Black community who are willing to sell out our own people to an enemy like that, you think the enemy loves you? You think the enemy loves you? The enemy hates your guts and the enemy knows who you are.
They don't trust you.
They can't trust you because they know that you sell out your own. So it's only a matter of time before the same enemy will give you up. Man, it's so sad.
600 forces pre-deployed in West Africa and Gabon. France had over 5,000 troops in the Sahelan part of Africa, as part of the Barkhane anti-jihadist operation. Bear in mind that France has been gradually pushed out by military governments that came to power in Mali in 2021, Burkina Faso in 2022, and Niger in 2023. The decision taken by President Macron to withdraw troops from Niger in 2022 led to worsening attacks from jihadist groups. Until the coup, Niger had remained a key security partner for France and the United States, which used her as a base to help in the regional fight with groups linked to al-Qaeda. This Islamic State has killed thousands and displaced millions across the Sahel and beyond. A document marking the official end of France's military.
Just important to understand, dear family, we're not talking about small matters here, you see, because as we speak, Africans are suffering. Yes, thousands have been killed. Okay, hundreds of thousands of Africans have lost their lives, and millions of Africans have been displaced from their homes. This is the reality. And so you've got all of these Africans now in certain parts of the continent which have been made like war zones because these groups, these terrorists have been enabled by the West to run amok. And in places like Democratic Republic of Congo, you know, the people are really suffering. There is no stability there. There's people, you know, women are being raped and dehumanized to the degree that there is no ability for that people to be able to live a normal life whereby they can focus on growth and development. They're literally focused on survival and avoiding death and destruction, you see? And while all of that is going on, the country is being raped of its mineral wealth, and it's all coming into the West, you see? And we got so-called leaders there who allow that type of situation to continue. And those leaders, they bank in Switzerland, they bank in the City of London, they bank in the West, you see? And this is really diabolical, and it has to come to an end, dear family.
Military engagement with Niger was signed by both parties in the capital Niamey in December 2023. The last group of seemingly tired French soldiers and backpacks boarded a military plane that took off shortly after. Following the strategies of Malian and Burkinabe military leaders, Niger's self-appointed military leader also ordered the government to expel French ambassador Sylvain Ide. At that moment, diplomatic relations with Niger became so tense, causing a closure of the French embassy there following the military leader's instructions. When the French ambassador was leaving Niger, the population took to the streets shouting, "Go thief, go thief." What a shame for Emmanuel Macron. Long live free.
Our people telling them to get out and telling them, go away, thief, go thief, go thief. This is what our people were saying, because our people know who's been robbing them and who have kept them in poverty. These are, when you're talking about Niger, when you're talking about Burkina Faso, when you're talking about Nigeria, you know, the most populous nation on the continent, when you're talking about all of these countries, when you talk about Kenya and all of these countries, when you're talking about the Democratic Republic of Congo, Central Africa, you're talking about wealth that you can't even begin to imagine how rich these countries are. But yet the people are impoverished because they are being kept that way. And that has to stop, you see? And the more the masses of the people wake up to the reality, the masses of the people are the ones who can actually change the condition by saying to those leaders, get out. Just the same way in which they're chucking the French out, they have to chuck out these Africans who are collaborators with the enemy. It has to stop. You see, there's no justification for it. You can't say that there's any morality there. And when it comes to righteous conduct, the people have the moral high ground, and the people have to stand on that and make a determination that once and for all, their humanity is more valuable. See, we got to put value back on each and every individual life, because right now we live in a world where when you talk about an African child dying or an African man or woman dying, it's like nothing. But you know, they tried to assassinate Trump the other day. You see how the importance they put on his life. You see that's the huge debate on the planet, because you know that's the value on one of their lives. Where's the value on our life? Where's the value on our presidents' lives, the ones that they've killed? We're going to get into that a little bit more in a second, dear family.
Africa. The pullout from Mali and Burkina Faso, where its soldiers were supporting the Sahel nations to battle a long-running armed rebellion, has come on the back of a wave of local hostility. France no longer has an African policy. President Macron, during one of his visits to Burkina Faso in 2017, told Burkinabe students that he wanted to form a generation that has never...
You just said something a second ago. France no longer has an African policy. That's a lie. That's a lie. I went to a meeting several years ago now at the so-called South African embassy, and it was a sister from Africa who was speaking. She was the deputy minister in one of the governments. She was a deputy president in one of the governments. I can't remember exactly her title or station, but she said something again that struck me. She talked about all of these European countries having foreign policy when it comes to each of the African countries. But she said no African country had a foreign policy on any European country.
Of course.
So all of these meetings between heads of state and finance ministers from these different countries or whatever, it's like the Africans would trot into these meetings. The so-called African leaders would trot into these meetings to sit, to be told by the Europeans, their European counterparts, what the European counterparts' policies were. Not that we were coming to the table with a counter policy. There was no negotiation as such, no bargaining as such. It was like, you know, masters and servants. This has to stop, dear family, because these people will always have a policy on us. These people will always have a program and a position that they desire to execute where we're concerned.
2017, told Burkinabe students that he wanted to form a generation that has never known Africa as a colonized continent. The meeting was marked by a memorable incident. When questioned on the issue of frequent power cuts in Burkina Faso, President Macron responded, "You speak to me like I am a colonial power, but I don't want to look after electricity in Burkina Faso. That's the job of your president."
That reminds me of the Holy Quran, when the devil says, "Don't blame me."
Yes.
You know,
I have no authority over you.
yeah, I have no authority over you. You know, I called you and you came.
That's right.
You see? So here's Macron saying, "What are you asking me
Yes.
about your electricity? France is well lit up." Yeah, but that's down to your president. The fact that he's a sellout, the fact that he's working on my behalf is irrelevant. That don't ask me about it, because I'm not actually in control here. I've just put something into automatic remote control and it's functioning. Go back to the Willie Lynch speech and how Willie Lynch predicted that, you know, his system, if enacted, would stay in perpetuity for 300 years. You see? Because you don't even have to have a white man in the room now, a lot of the times. We just carry out what he has put in place, what he left in place when he was supposed to have left. You know, how many years ago in the 60s at so-called independence.
He told his then Burkinabe counterpart, Roch-Marc Cabaret, that he is of a generation that doesn't tell Africans what to do. The age of Franc-Afrique is well over. Franc-Afrique is a favorite target of Pan-Africanists, who believe that, after the wave of decolonization in 1960, France propped up dictators in its former colonies in exchange for access to resources and military bases. Macron and his predecessor, Francois Hollande, have previously declared that their former policies towards Africa are dead and that France has no intention of meddling in sovereign affairs.
See, all of that, when you hear what France is saying, oh, you know, the past is the past, we're not going to do that again, we're not doing that anymore, we don't plan to do that in the future. Let me tell you something. If you think that you can take the Caucasian's word for anything he says, see, because he will say all the right things. He will make all the right noises and pronouncements, but understand that he's a liar. How does the Bible say it? You're a liar and a murderer from the beginning. Okay? And the same lust that your father did, you're going to do the same thing today, because that's what they do. Okay? They don't change. The leopard never changes his spots. Understand this, family. You know, a promise is a comfort to a fool. So you can listen to all the nice words, and so many of us, as soon as we hear, and some of us, we just can't wait to hear the white man say, "Oh, I'm sorry for what we did," and then we're, "Oh, thank God, it's over now." You think because he says sorry that he means it? Stop it, family. We show such naivety when it comes to the way in which this world is constructed, that we have to come into reality and come into reality quick, okay? Because otherwise we will remain in the web. We will remain ensnared, okay? We will never, ever extricate ourselves, and we become like a dog chasing his tail, going around and around, doing the same thing, repeating the same history,
but wanting change,
but expecting change, whilst we're doing the same thing and not realizing that after a while you can't even point the finger at the enemy. You got to look at yourself. We got to look at us, because if we would only change our approach to this situation, and you know, a significant part of this problem, in my humble opinion, is our rejection of that which God has revealed.
of right guidance.
You understand? Because we got right guidance today,
Right.
but how many of us are willing to line up behind the leadership that we've actually been given that would help all of us to
Set us
get
free.
ourselves out of this situation and literally set us free.
And
Go
on
ahead,
that
sister.
note, I would say to read this article in the Final Call, this week's article, where the minister's written for the, hold on, it says, our sentence is in America is up. God has come for the black man and woman.
Think about that. Read that headline again.
Our sentence in America is up. God has come for the black man and woman.
So imagine you're sent to prison,
Right.
you're locked up,
Right.
and then the jailer comes and says, you're free. And we say, no, we want to stay in the cell.
Yeah.
Because that's essentially what we would do if we don't make a determination to go free.
That's right. So let me just read a little bit of it.
Go ahead.
It says, the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. What most of us do not know is, it is as if God, through the Prophet Abraham, gave us a sentence of time. If you have been to prison, I hope that you haven't, but so many of us have. Lord, when the time comes for you to get out, you don't want to hang around. In fact, you start getting ready before the morning of your leaving prison to get out to meet your family and friends. What you have not maybe realized is that God said to Abraham in the 15th chapter of Genesis, know of a surety, Abraham, that your seed is going to be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. And they are going to serve a strange people in a strange land for 400 years. But after that time, I will come.
That's right, God talking.
You're right. And I will judge that nation which they shall serve. And afterwards shall they come out with great substance and go to their fathers in peace and be buried in a right old age. And then just to finish, how long have we been here?
Come on.
We have served the 400-year sentence in a strange land among a strange people who have afflicted us every day of those 400 years up until this very moment. So God has fulfilled his promise. He came, he found us robbed and spoiled, wearing the name of our former slave master, speaking the language of our slave master.
Come on.
So I'll say, just read the rest of that article.
That's
it's
right.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and again, you see, because we've been taught religion in such a fairy tale manner, you see, a lot of us, we don't believe that God came because we were taught fairy tale and cartoon, Shazam.
Yes.
So when God comes, it will be some huge explosion in the sky and there'll be a big finger coming out of a cloud. Stop it.
Well, this is, okay, I'll read what you were saying. And about 240 years ago, the same slave master who didn't want us to learn how to read and write finally said it was not incompatible that we should be slaves and Christians at the same time. So they made us Christians.
Come on.
We've been better Christians than they are. We love them, but they have not shown us no love of Christ for us. None whatsoever. Our time of servitude is up. Our time of living in a strange land is up. God wants to give us a land of our own, like he did the children of Israel 4,000 years ago. He doesn't want us integrated into our slave master and their children. He wants us to come out of them. America now is under divine judgment. So God is giving them and us a period of grace. Grace to see if the slave master wants to live a little longer by letting you go and giving you a good send-off. God wants to see if they would be kind to their ex-slaves who have fought for them, bled for them, died for them. Yet, while at the same time we died for their freedom, we are still around here singing, we shall overcome.
Wow.
And just don't forget, read that.
Yeah, read the article, dear family, because, you know, if we remain disbelievers.
Hmm.
This is a huge problem for
That's
us.
right.
You see, and there's a lot of predictions in the scriptures and elsewhere that says that so many of us will just not believe.
That's right.
You see, and part of what we try to do on the Image of Nation show is, one, to demonstrate our own belief, and two, to try to encourage you
That's
to
right.
understand that there is
That's right.
power, power for you.
That's right.
You can be empowered to actually make a change in
That's
your
right.
own life
That's right.
by believing that which Almighty God Allah has revealed to
That's
us.
right.
That's where we get what we get. That's where we're getting this from.
That's
It
right.
isn't because Sister Claudia and myself laid down one night, woke up with a good idea.
No.
It's because a teacher
That's
was
right.
formulated
That's
for
right.
us to
One
teach
thing.
us the
That's right.
reality of our enemy, the reality of God, the reality of ourselves. And so this is what Black people need if we're going to escape the web
That's right.
of Western deceit, because we're living under the Western influence in the Western world.
Note that during a visit to Gabon in March, Macron spoke of the challenges of mobilizing international finance as he and the Gabonese Minister of Environment, Lee White, toured the Rapondo Walker Arboretum, a protected coastal area north of Libreville. In response, the minister said, "People see little of it on the ground because the systems are imperfect." Last year, the Agency for the Safety of Air Navigation in Africa and Madagascar announced that the military rulers had banned French aircraft from flying over Niger's airspace. This happened immediately before Ambassador Sylvain Ide was asked to leave the country after the overthrow of President Bazoum.
When you see an African nation banning French military planes from flying over their country, that's such a wonderful sign. When you see them throwing the ambassador out of the country, telling them that they've got 24 hours to leave, that's wonderful. But remember, you got to follow through. You don't just do little piecemeal things and then think that, oh, the enemy is going to go away. It doesn't work like that. It has to be conclusive, dear family.
The French government refused to leave after a 48-hour ultimatum was made. They refused to comply and recognize the military regime as legitimate. The Economic Community of West Africa states threatened military action to restore President Bazoum, but so far, its threats, which were strongly supported by France.
That's ECOWAS, okay? And that grouping was a grouping that the West was relying on to basically force Niger back into its subservient place to France. You see, because they've always got their puppet leaders or their puppet regimes or their puppet systems, and this bloc, ECOWAS, which is supposed to be an economic forum for African countries, yet it was really under the control of France. And, you know, they tried to threaten Niger, but so far their threats have been empty, and the Nigerian population is moving forward, not intimidated, and trying to do something for themselves.
But so far, its threats, which were strongly supported by France, have not transformed into action. There has been indeed a long period, roughly corresponding to the Cold War, when France used a certain amount of skullduggery and military muscle to foster its interests in French Africa.
France uses skullduggery. I was thinking about that word, skullduggery, and it just reminded me of their piracy. You see, because these people skullduggery. You understand what I'm saying? These people are so tricky and so downright wicked that it's all skullduggery that's been used to trick and manipulate the situations on the continent in order to keep them in benefit and the Africans in detriment. Dear family, I think this video is talking about, I think like literally 8, I just wanted to show you 8 Africans or 8 black leaders, 8 leaders from the global South who attempted to stand up to these Europeans and how they were dealt with.
Number 8, Rafik Hariri. Standing against the West was a crime, and Rafik Hariri is one of the leaders who paid the price for committing this crime. Hariri, the former Prime Minister of Lebanon, experienced a politically charged assassination. In 2005, Hariri fell victim to a massive bombing in Beirut, marking a tragic turn in the region's politics. The international community condemned the assassination, but it was too late. This incident played a key role in reshaping the dynamics of the Middle East. While direct evidence linking Western powers to Hariri's assassination is lacking, the experts still keep accusing West of the incident. The opposition to Syrian influence in Lebanon
know who did it, okay? You know, what the Western world does, whether it's, you know, these so-called secret services that they have, these security forces that they use, whether it's MI6 or Mossad or the CIA or any of them, you know, they have a thing that they call plausible deniability, where they will kill people, and they do it all the time, but at the same time, they do it in such a way that, you know, up front, they can say, well, no, we had nothing to do with it. But when you look carefully at who the person is who has met their end in a bombing or a shooting or poisoning or some other way that they choose to kill the person, then you'll see a direct correlation between what that person represented and what the CIA, what Mossad, what MI5 or MI6 represent in terms of their governments in trying to maintain control over these nations that they want to suppress, keep down, or steal their resources. You understand? This is what's happening all the time in this world in which we live.
was a notable factor, with the aftermath of the assassination prompting the withdrawal of Syrian troops from the country. The geopolitical complexities of the Middle East, particularly the involvement of Western interests, came to the forefront as the incident unfolded. Rafik Hariri's assassination showcased how external interests could influence and even determine the fate of political leaders in the Middle East. Number 7. Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara, the charismatic and revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso, left an indelible mark on African politics with his bold challenges to Western economic interests.
So you see, now with Ibrahim Traore, this is the predecessor, the prototype of our young brother today. Thomas Sankara tried to do many of the things that you see Ibrahim Traore today attempting to do, but he was assassinated. Don't think for 1 minute that they don't have the same plan in store for this new brother in 2024 that they had for our brother back in the day. Do you understand? This is how these people operate, and they never, ever change. You see, and this is why, again, we're saying you gotta be on your post. You gotta be on your guard. This young brother has got to be absolutely protected. And I love the way the brother is really conducting himself. He doesn't even shake hands with anybody. Okay, it's a fist bump. That's all you get from our brother Ibrahim Traore. He's not shaking hands. He's not allowing you to put nothing, contaminate him with any powder or any nonsense, because he is very much a student of history, and he recognizes that he has to do everything in his power to safeguard himself and his nation. And he's constantly talking to his nation and talking to the people of the world, whoever cares to listen. And that's another departure from so many of these African leaders who oftentimes they've got nothing to say. We don't hear from them. But here's a brother who is talking to his people, informing his people, keeping his people up to speed and up to date with exactly what he's doing, so that the people and the leader is one. It's beautiful, man. But just be mindful, family, because we've been here before. That's the point. The point is that we can't have yesterday be repeated today.
Sankara's leadership was defined by his commitment to socialist policies and a genuine belief in the importance of self-reliance for his nation. However, in 1987, Sankara's ambitious vision for social and economic transformation was abruptly cut short when he fell victim to an internal coup, motivated by some external forces. His close associate, Blaise Compaoré, orchestrated the coup that led to Sankara's demise.
And they can always find some Negro who will carry out their bidding and kill their own brother. Okay, understand this. We got to be really, really mindful and careful of those who come dressed like us, looking like us, sounding like us, smiling with us, but at the same time, working for our open and wicked enemy. Because this is how they have so often killed our leadership and those who could have by now, if most of our leadership, the good leadership that came up, the natural leadership that came up, if that leadership would have been allowed to live, oh my God, Africa would be a superpower leading the world today. And that's what the enemy is afraid of. It's not that Africans are inferior, black people are inferior. You can get the hell out of here with that idea. If anyhow Africans, black people, original people are allowed to operate on an even playing field with everybody else, it's over, man. You can't touch us for intelligence. You can't touch us for prowess in any field of endeavor. This is real. But so they have to cut the leadership down. They have to kill them because they have to maintain that unfair playing field, that unfair arena where they have all the advantages and we have all the disadvantages. And, you know, unfortunately, quite often they can find within our own ranks those wicked Uncle Tom sellouts and traitors.
That led to Sankara's demise. Sankara's assassination silenced a passionate advocate for change, and that, according to many, was what the West wanted at that time. Number 6. Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi, the long-standing ruler of Libya, experienced a fierce downfall because of both external conflicts and internal dissent. Gaddafi's confrontations with the West, particularly during the Arab Spring in 2011, escalated tensions and ultimately led to NATO intervention in Libya. The international...
And most of that so-called Arab Spring was inspired behind the scenes by Western provocation and Western influence, okay? See, a lot of these NGOs, these so-called non-government organizations that we allow into our countries, and they're all operating all over the land and among the people, and we don't know what the hell they're doing, and they're supposed to be there on humanitarian missions and this, that, and the other, and providing health care and all kinds of nonsense. Quite often, these are the groups and others that are manipulating populations and sowing dissent among the people and fomenting uprisings against the leadership of the country. And before you know it, you got some crazy uprising going on, and you're wondering what happened, because the enemy is all up in our countries, okay? And looking at the opposition oftentimes to the governments and fomenting within that opposition, you know, violent uprisings, and then before you know it, your whole country is in turmoil, and we ourselves are the ones who oftentimes let the enemy in, because guess what? We don't know the enemy. We think that the enemy is our friend. We think that the enemy is our friend, and we allow them free rein to run up and down all over our countries, not realizing that the very aid workers oftentimes are the very enemy themselves.
community intervened in response to the government's brutal crackdown on protesters and the threat it posed to civilians. This intervention marked a significant turning point in Gaddafi's regime and initiated a series of events that would shape the fate of Libya. The Arab Spring, a series of pro-democracy uprisings across the Arab world, created an environment of discontent and unrest within Libya. Gaddafi's authoritarian rule faced challenges as citizens demanded political reforms and greater freedoms. While the intervention achieved its immediate objective, it also left Libya in
I want you to remember what you just said there, okay? You know, they were demanding reforms and greater freedoms. I want you to just remember, you see, because again, there's something that we also need to understand about this scripture that talks about Jesus riding into Jerusalem on a donkey and the people saying, Hosanna, Hosanna, and they're in love with this man who is a holy and righteous man of God. But then not long after, when the chance is given to the same people to choose between that same man and a thief named Barabbas, they choose the thief over the good man. So understand something about, you know, the mob mentality and the insanity of mob rule, and how quite often, you know, mobs can be influenced in such a way that we literally, it's like we just become brainless and whatever the group is doing. Yeah. You know, I've been, you know, there's those of you who know anything about the Notting Hill Carnival, for instance, as an example, I'm just going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. I've been at the carnival in the past, historically, and there's over 1 million people on the street. And in some places it's very, very tight and it's just crazy, the level of crowd that's compact into these streets. And then you will have a situation where something will happen and somebody will start running. And then you've got, all of a sudden, everybody starts running. And, you know, I found myself in that situation one time. And all I did, family, I saw everybody running. I just stood back. I just put my back against the wall and just stood there and watched girls and people running and jumping over a barrier and crashing onto the concrete and scratching themselves up and injuring themselves. And I'm thinking, and nobody knew why they were running. You have to be so careful not to get caught up in a crowd mentality, in a mob mentality. And the media is constantly manipulating the masses of the people to behave in that way. You gotta put your thinking cap on and think for yourself. You see, because if you don't, you can end up hurting a good man because you have believed something about that man which is totally and utterly untrue. We're talking here specifically about the Libyan, because my God, people talking about, and you know, again, what the narrator is saying is not necessarily true, but the point I'm trying to make is that he's talking about a people wanting more freedom, wanting more, you know, from the government. But in a minute, you'll hear what Muammar Gaddafi's government was doing for his people.
Political chaos, with various factions vying for control. Gaddafi's death in 2011 not only signaled the end of an era, but also plunged Libya into a prolonged period of political unrest. The vacuum left by his absence resulted in a power struggle among competing factions, leading to ongoing instability and conflict. Number 5. Amilcar Cabral. Amilcar Cabral, a visionary leader and revolutionary figure, played a key role in the liberation movements against Portuguese colonial rule in Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. Born in 1924, Cabral dedicated his life to the cause of independence, advocating for the rights and autonomy of his people. As the founder and leader of the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde (PAIGC), Cabral directed a resistance against the oppressive colonial forces. Tragically, Cabral's unwavering commitment to freedom and self-determination was cut short when he was assassinated in 1973 by militants from his party just before witnessing the realization of the independence he had fervently fought for. His assassination had many strings attached to the West, as he always stood against them. His untimely death served as a reminder of the complex and wild nature of post-colonial power struggles. The void left by Cabral's absence posed challenges for the newly liberated nations, balancing the delicate transition from colonial domination to self-governance. Number 4. Sylvanus Olympio. Sylvanus Olympio, a key figure in Togo's history, met a tragic end due to his steadfast resistance to Western economic influences. In 1963,
and I hope you notice who you're sitting
Olympio's
next to there. That's Kennedy, okay? President Kennedy, who then was assassinated by his own government, the same way in which they just tried to assassinate Donald Trump, because they're used to even killing their own, much less what they do to African leaders who don't conform to their rule and what they want to do in terms of the exploitation of the land and the resources. These are people who are killers, man. They kill when they can't get their own way, they kill. That's what they do. That's what they do, family. They can't get their own way, they murder.
Stance against external pressures culminated in a coup that led to his assassination, casting a dark shadow over the political world of Togo for decades to come. Olympio's commitment to shielding Togo from the grip of Western economic interests made him a target for those who sought to maintain regional influence. The coup not only claimed the life of a visionary leader, but also triggered enduring political instability in Togo. The aftermath of Olympio's assassination rolled through the nation's governance, fostering a climate of uncertainty and unrest. Number 3. Samora Machel. Samora Machel, Mozambique's inaugural president, met a tragic end in 1980.
I named one of my sons after him, Samora Machel. You know, but these are great leaders that we have produced. It's not that we haven't produced great leaders and great people, but they were cut down, man, assassinated, because the enemy desires to keep Africa in its grip.
6, when his plane crashed near the South African border. Machel was committed to the country's development and social progress as the first leader of independent Mozambique. The circumstances surrounding his untimely death remain shrouded in mystery, with suspicions of South African apartheid government involvement casting a long shadow over the incident. The plane crash, while officially deemed an accident, has fueled speculation and allegations of foul play.
Plain and simple, family.
Given Machel's outspoken stance against apartheid and his support for anti-apartheid movements, the possibility of external interference in his demise has been a subject of ongoing inquiry. The lack of conclusive evidence has only added to the complexity and conspiracy surrounding Machel's tragic end. Machel's legacy persists as a symbol.
That's what they call it.
Of Mozambique's struggle for independence and the challenges faced by leaders advocating for social justice in a turbulent geopolitical time. Number 2, André Matsangaisa. André Matsangaisa, a key figure in the Mozambican resistance against Portuguese colonial rule, met a tragic end when he was assassinated in 1969. As a relentless advocate for Mozambican independence, Matsangaisa played a crucial role in the fight against colonial oppression. His untimely death, however, remains clouded in suspicion and controversy, with some reports suggesting the involvement of Western intelligence services due to his anti-colonial activities. The circumstances surrounding Matsangaisa's assassination highlight the complex dynamics of the struggle for independence in Mozambique and the lengths to which colonial powers were willing to go to suppress resistance movements. The alleged connection to Western intelligence services raises questions about the extent of external interference in the internal affairs of nations striving for self-determination. Number 1, Patrice Lumumba.
Just before we look at our brother Patrice Lumumba, somebody is asking the question, what is the name of the documentary? And it's not a documentary in truth, it's just a series of different things that you can find on YouTube and in other places online that I cut up and put together. So it's not like a documentary in and of itself where all of this information comes from. There may be a documentary that highlights this, but it's not a single title that I could actually give you, family.
Patrice Lumumba, the inaugural democratically elected Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, embarked on a journey marked by opposition from Western powers. Lumumba's steadfast anti-colonial stance made him a target for those who sought to maintain their influence in the resource-rich region. In 1960, his political ascent was abruptly halted when he was arrested, setting the stage for a series of tragic events that would seal his fate. The circumstances surrounding Lumumba's assassination in 1961 remain shrouded in controversy, with allegations of involvement by the United States and Belgium casting a dark shadow over the incident. Not just the United States and
Belgium, the British as well. They were jam up in the whole thing.
This untimely demise extinguished Lumumba's aspirations and severely affected his vision for a sovereign and united Congo.
Dear family, I hope you are following because, we just have to appreciate the reality of what we're dealing with here. This brother here, Fidel Castro, he spoiled the party of the Americans who used Cuba as a playground for gambling and prostitution, and you name it, it was a playground for all manner of things. The mafia were down there in full control of that island, and they had the puppet leader down there called Batista, I think his name was, and Fidel Castro and some of his revolutionary colleagues decided that, enough was enough and they had to take back control of that island. But understand this, Gaddafi and so many other African leaders literally had tens and sometimes hundreds of assassination attempts, but there is nobody in the history of assassinations who have had more assassination attempts against him than this man, Fidel Castro. And the people of Cuba, right the way back from the start of the revolution to this very day, remain under sanctions. And that's why when you look at Cuba and you see images from Cuba, you see all those old fishtail American cars, because literally they've been denied the ability to import new cars and things of that nature. And so the people have become so, the ingenuity of the people is so awesome that they've kept cars running on the road from the 1940s and the 1950s. Okay, they've managed to be able to keep those cars moving and functioning because of the embargo and the sanctions that have been imposed by the American regime over all of these years, dear family.
Fidel Castro.
We can go on for 5, 10, 15, 20 more years. The only obligation on our part, really, is toward peace.
Few people have danced with death as much as Cuba's Fidel Castro. There were allegedly 638 plans to take the revolutionary out, many of which were orchestrated by the CIA. Some of these plots were cartoonish. 2 involved tainting Castro's beloved cigars with an explosive agent or a toxin. Another featured booby-trapping a seashell that would be painted to entice the scuba diving enthusiast.
The CIA acquired 2 books on Caribbean mollusks, but they just can't find a shell big enough to do the job.
One plan even seemed straight out of a James Bond movie, involving a poison administered through a pen. At one point,
638 different assassination attempts. And they make it sound like, they even said it was cartoonish, trying to contaminate his cigar with an explosive element, trying to paint particular shells a particular way that would attract him because he was a scuba diver. He liked to go diving. When he would get the shell, then it would blow up and kill him, or whatever. But make no mistake, this is not cartoon. There was no cartoon business involved. They even went so far as to employ the mafia on occasion to try to kill Castro. This is the American government employing the mafia to kill Castro. This is how corrupt they are. And there was a woman, I think her name was Judy Exner, or Judy Exner, I think her name was, and she was sleeping with a mafia leader called Sam Giancana and sleeping with one of the Kennedy brothers, President Kennedy, at the same time. And according to Judy Exner, she said they both did business the same way. Just think about that. Okay, here's a woman caught up with a mafia leader and the president, and as far as she was concerned, she really couldn't see no difference between them, okay? You know, I mean, this is just the diabolical nature of this world, where the Cuban leader was targeted 638 times for assassination, and only by the grace of God did that man manage to survive.
Administered through a pen. At one point, the CIA lazily considered throwing leaflets throughout Cuba, offering a reward to take out Castro. Ultimately, the man who said he would have won gold if surviving assassinations were an Olympic event passed away in 2016 at age 90.
638 plots to kill Castro and a few close shaves.
Family, I hope you are good. I just want us to look at this last one here.
Today, we shall be talking about the achievements of Libya's former leader, Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi ruled Libya as a revolutionary chairman of the Libyan Arab Republic from 1969 till 1977, and as the brotherly leader of the great socialist People's Libyan Arab Jamahiriya from 1977 till 2011, when he was...
That's 1969 to 2011. 1969 to 2011, that gives that man 45 years ruling that country. And he, by the way, he came to power in what's called a bloodless coup. He didn't kill nobody, but he took over that country, and, you know, Libya was never the same again.
Assassinated. As a highly tactical and divisive figure, Muammar Gaddafi dominated Libya's politics for over 4 decades and developed the country significantly in many different ways. During his reign, Libya was one of the fastest growing economies of Africa and was often referred to as the Middle East of Africa. It is
one of the fastest growing economies in Africa. It's just important to understand when you hear people talking about, oh, this, the mad dog of the desert and whatever. Yeah, but he had time to be building the economy of his nation. In other words, benefiting his nation, benefiting his people. Because you have to really be mindful of who you're getting your information from when you're listening to these people telling you about an African leader, or anybody for that matter, that they don't like. You know, because we've heard all about Putin, right? And we hear all about all of these others that they don't like. You heard all about Robert Mugabe killing his own people, and we can go on and on. You heard all about Saddam killing his own people. You heard all about Assad in Syria killing his own people. And it's always the other guy on the outside who is the wicked, evil demon, and these here are the good guys, right? And this is what so many of us fall for, hook, line, and sinker, not having any appreciation of what these people are actually doing.
Africa, and was often referred to as the Middle East of Africa. It is difficult to talk about Gaddafi's achievements in Libya in just one aspect. He actually did a lot for his people before his death in 2011, and we have gathered several of his achievements in all sectors of the economy in today's video.
Before his death, before his murder, before his assassination, which was almost done on camera. These wicked demons. And Hillary Clinton, that witch hag, went on camera and boasted, "We came, we saw, and he died." And then she cackled like a witch. I mean, imagine the mentality of these people. And that was under Obama. That was Obama's government that did that, you see? And do you think that Muammar Gaddafi thought that this African African president was going to be the one to come and do that. Reagan tried to do it. I think when Reagan tried to do it, they said it was the most expensive assassination attempt in the history of assassinations, because they used warplanes to bomb where they believed Gaddafi was, and he wasn't there. They managed to kill one of his, I think his niece, and killed so many other innocent people, but they missed Gaddafi. But finally, they were able to eliminate this leader under the auspices of the Obama regime, with Clinton, Hillary Clinton, as one of his.
Before his death in 2011, and we have gathered several of his achievements in all sectors of the economy in today's video. Just watch this video carefully and find out for yourself the most striking deeds of this renowned Libyan leader. In 1951, Libya gained independence from Italy and was looking forward to development, and depended a lot on foreign aid from other Western and European nations.
So remember, 1951, it gets its independence from Italy, okay? And it's looking forward to development because it's underdeveloped at that time. Under Italy, the country is kept underdeveloped. It's just important, again, that when we listen to these narrators, that we actually listen carefully to what's being said, because, you know, this is why Gaddafi had to take back control of his country, because under colonization, it wasn't doing very well.
And was looking forward to development, and depended a lot on foreign aid from other Western and European nations like Britain and the US. But then, in 1956, everything suddenly changed in Libya, with the very first discovery of oil in the country. This was a great civilizational potential that was hidden in the country for centuries. The population of Libya began to skyrocket, and problems related to development started increasing as well. Have you ever heard about the golden dinar, a dream currency for Africa that was envisaged by Muammar Gaddafi? It was going to be his greatest achievement in Libya, Africa, and the world at large. However, the project was crushed by...
So remember, Gaddafi had a vision for an African currency, a golden dinar, okay? A currency backed by gold, backed by something real and tangible, not this fiat money that basically is backed by nothing in the West. And were the West happy about Gaddafi's ideas, his plans for Libya and Africa? Again,
by Muammar Gaddafi. It was going to be his greatest achievement in Libya, Africa, and the world at large. However, the project was crushed by Western powers and was not realized at the end. Between the 1950s and 60s, Libya was among the poorest countries in the world, but when Gaddafi came to power in 1969, he made Libya...
Remember, it was among the poorest countries in the world before this man took power and took office. This is what's important for us to appreciate.
Richest African country, with over $150 billion in its foreign reserves, with no budget deficit. Libya had the strongest and most valuable... I know you
didn't hear that, right? He took it from being the poorest to becoming one of the richest, okay? With billions in reserve and no budget deficit, no debt. When have you ever heard of a country on the planet that hasn't got debt, that's not indebted to these international banks? And one of the reasons why they hated Gaddafi is because he refused to borrow money from the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank or any of them. See, here's a man who put his country to work and determined to build his country using that oil money, that oil revenue. And by the way, you know, we live in these capitalist systems. And I know for many of us, we can't really think outside the box. And again, this is why we produce image a nation, because we're trying to encourage all of us to think outside of the box. Because this monetary system, this economic system, this social construct, this political system under which we live does not have to be, and is not necessarily the only way that a country or a world can be governed. There are other ways that these things can be done. And Muammar Gaddafi proved, he didn't theorize about it, he did it. Please, brothers and sisters, as we come towards the end of our show, please listen and watch carefully.
However, the project was crushed by Western powers and was not realized at the end. Between the 1950s and 60s, Libya was among the poorest countries in the world, but when Gaddafi came to power in 1969, he made Libya the richest African country, with over $150 billion in its foreign reserves, with no budget deficit. Libya had the strongest and most valuable currency in Africa. The Libyan dinar was also one of the strongest currencies in the world. Gaddafi proposed the idea behind the Libyan strong currency to the AU and wanted African countries to work to create an African currency.
So not only is he building this kind of economy in Libya, making it rich and powerful and strong, but he's also proposing the same concept and ideas to the African Union. And he's trying to encourage the other African nations to join with him. And he propagated the idea of the United States of Africa, Africa unifying and becoming a power block on this planet. I want you to understand this. A lot of the African leaders resisted. They didn't want to know about unity and what our great brother Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana said, the United States of Africa. They were happy to maintain those artificial borders that were drawn in the Berlin Conference, dividing Africans, dividing people along tribal and other stupid lines in order to keep us divided and at the mercy of our colonial masters. I just want us to think today, brothers and sisters, because see, a lot of these problems are inflicted on us from the outside, but a lot of it is also self-inflicted, self-inflicted.
Strongest and most valuable currency in Africa. The Libyan dinar was also one of the strongest currencies in the world. Gaddafi proposed the idea behind the Libyan strong currency to the AU and wanted African countries to work to create an African currency, backed by gold, in order to strengthen the continent's economy and alleviate poverty and deterioration. During Gaddafi's reign, all education to university level was paid by the government. People who were not able to access their desired courses in Libya.
Just think about all of these students going to colleges and universities in the UK and American, and they come out of these institutions with these massive debts because of how expensive education is. But in Libya, the government paid everything. So that level of education is free for the students. I just want you to see that there is alternative ways. And you think that the Western governments were happy having an African leader showing them up in that manner? And do you think that they want anybody else to know what was going on in Libya and who might now start thinking that they can copy that type of model? My God.
And deterioration. During Gaddafi's reign, all education to university level was paid by the government. People who were not able to access their desired courses in Libya were funded to pursue them abroad by the government. This helped increase the literacy rate in Libya from 20.
So if you couldn't find what you wanted to study in Libya, the government would pay for you to go abroad to find your course to study it. Does that sound like a man who is holding down his population? My God. I tell you, You know, when you listen to this Western media, you would be kept an absolute fool.
Not able to access their desired courses in Libya, were funded to pursue them abroad by the government. This helped increase the literacy rate in Libya from 25% to about 90%. Public education in the country became
Do you
free.
think literacy rates in America and Britain are 90%? I beg to differ.
Mhm.
You see, but that's how high the man took the literacy rate from 25% in the country when he took the country over to over 90%. But this is the mad dog of the desert. But he's into educating his people, male and female, by the way. For those who have got this notion about Islam not wanting women to be educated, yeah, honestly, I wish we would study, and I wish we would begin to actually think outside of this box that this enemy has constructed for the masses of the people.
Abroad by the government. This helped increase the literacy rate in Libya from 25% to about 90%. Public education in the country became free and primary education compulsory for both sexes. Additionally, electricity in Libya was free for everyone.
I beg your pardon? Anybody here struggling with electricity bills?
That's right.
But in Libya, your electricity was free. By the way, all of the utility bills. You didn't get charged. Utility bills, water rates, all of that. Free. Free, family. Because this is what God provides. Do you know that the great inventor, I think his first name is Nikolai, I think Tesla. Do you know that he produced a lot of electrical components in the past that basically meant that you could get free electricity just from the atmosphere, and that those things have been suppressed and submerged and hidden from the masses of the people, the populations of the world? That Tesla was working on free electricity for the populations of the world, but they don't want that. They want you to be able to, you have to pay for electricity. Do you understand that there's been men, both a white man and a black man, and probably more people who have invented cars that can run on water alone, but that the oil companies have suppressed that and destroyed those persons so that you have to go and buy fuel, fossil fuel that they complain that is contaminating the atmosphere, but yet you could have a car that can drive on water? Do you know what kind of Satan you're dealing with in this family? We never retreat from teaching the truth that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan continues to teach to this day.
Education in the country became free and primary education compulsory for both sexes. Additionally, electricity in Libya was free for everyone. Gaddafi also started a great irrigation system in the world that was meant to make water available to every home in Libya. The Great Man-Made River Project that was initiated in Libya...
The man brought water up from the desert to make his country fertile. This is a desert country. I think they said literally 90% of Libya is like desert. But here's a man that is so preoccupied with terrorism and being a mad dog that he's bringing water up from the desert to make sure that his people can have good, fresh drinking water, and that they can have agriculture and irrigation and everything that's needed to have a viable country. You see, family, remember that in the scriptures of the Bible, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the wicked, they call Jesus a devil. Just understand this, all right? So understand, when you see righteous people, think of all the ugly names that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is called. But if it wasn't for that man, Brother Leo and Sister Claudia probably wouldn't be sitting here today. A married couple, you know, with children and trying to live righteous, upright lives and trying to share some of what we've learned with other people. We wouldn't be doing what we're doing today if it wasn't for that man. But think about some of the ugly things you've heard about that man and understand what this world does to good people, to good human beings, and how many of us today, even as we speak, may be hating on other people that the media is constantly telling us about, but you actually know nothing about the person that you are being manipulated as a mob to hate. Because why? We're not even thinking for ourselves. We're being manipulated. We're being moved around like little pawns on a chessboard by a wicked and evil manipulator.
Also started a great irrigation system in the world that was meant to make water available to every home in Libya. The Great Man-Made River Project that was initiated in Libya at the time of Muammar Gaddafi is a memorable one in the country. The foundation stone for this project was laid in Sarir on August 28, 1984. This project utilizes a pipeline system that pumps water from the Nubian sandstone aquifer system down from South Libya to the cities in the north, including Tripoli and Benghazi. The water covers a distance of up to 1,600 kilometers and provides 70% of all fresh water used in Libya. It is important to note that Libya, being a desert county, has always faced long-standing water shortages. The water project funded by Gaddafi himself was nicknamed the Eighth Wonder of the World. If any Libyan citizens had interest in starting a farming business, the government could assist them with seed, land, and even livestock at no cost. Another aspect that was very peculiar...
I know you didn't hear that. I know you didn't hear what he said. And even the way he said it was a bit obscure, so you wouldn't really appreciate what he just said. But essentially, let me say what he said and let me say it properly. If you wanted to farm in Libya, the government would provide you with free seeds, free farm equipment. That means tractors, free, and free land to facilitate you in doing your farming. Okay, let's just be clear what Muammar Gaddafi's government was doing for the Libyan people. Remember, I asked you to remember earlier on what they, was said about, oh, the Libyan people wanted more freedom and this and that, whatever. I want you to think about what this man was providing for his people, and then you tell me if that population in Benghazi turned around and uprose against Gaddafi and his government, who was manipulating them? Who was behind them? Who was making them promises of something even better and greater than what they were already receiving from their leadership in Libya?
Farming business, the government could assist them with seeds, land, and even livestock at no cost. Another aspect that was very peculiar during Gaddafi's rule in Libya was that shelter was considered a natural human right.
Very peculiar. It was considered peculiar by who? By the West. Listen to what the man is saying. Shelter was regarded by the Libyan leader as a human right. In other words, you got a house or a flat free of charge. You don't pay rent for your house. You don't pay a mortgage. The house, you acquire the house just by being a citizen in Libya under Gaddafi because it's a human right. My God, I tell you, man.
During Gaddafi's rule in Libya was that shelter was considered a natural human right for every Libyan citizen. Homes in Libya were owned by individuals and families, and were not supposed to be rented according to laws put in place. It was part of Gaddafi's aim to combat homelessness in the country. The Green Book that was first published in 1975 was Gaddafi's Bible of political philosophy. He vowed that he would not secure a house for his own parents until every citizen had one. There are many other things Gaddafi achieved in Libya at the time he was president.
I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop stopping it and just let it play. But I hope you heard what again the narrator just said. Gaddafi vowed that his parents would not get their home until every citizen in Libya was housed. And they lived in a tent until every citizen was housed. And then they got their house. This is how the man operated. That green book is something that he wrote, okay, in laws and systems of fairness in his country, so that every Libyan literally lived well. Every Libyan partook of what came into that government, what came into that country. Every Libyan shared in it. Please, family, think about, because I know some of us on here probably hate Gaddafi. And why do we hate him? Because we've been listening to the devil teaching us history and teaching us about this man.
House for his own parents until every citizen had one. There are many other things Gaddafi achieved in Libya at the time he was president that we might not fully exhaust in this video. But you should take note that amongst these great achievements, Gaddafi ensured bursary to mothers who gave birth to newborn babies. Each of them received $5,000 for their...
So you're a new mother. Wouldn't you appreciate the government giving you $5,000 just because you've had a baby? Don't you think that would be something to help you to be able to, you know, especially if you're a working mother or whatever, then, you know, you got some money. How many of you have had to buy prams and pushchairs? My wife, she don't mess about. We can't use no pram that we used before. Every single baby that comes got to be a new pram, new buggy, and maybe a pram, maybe a buggy, because they're different. One's for light running up and down, another different stages of growth and development, the high chair, all of these different things, the crib, you know, the different types of nappies, the different clothing that the child grows out of in a month, because they're growing fast. But you have to keep on. Wouldn't 5,000 be helpful under those circumstances? Just think about what this man was doing for Libyan mothers, Libyan people. And this is the man that the devil wanted to murder.
That amongst these great achievements, Gaddafi ensured bursary to mothers who gave birth to newborn babies. Each of them received $5,000 for their upkeep. Petrol prices in Libya were the lowest in the world at that time. A liter of the fluid costed just a...
Petrol prices were the lowest in the world. They cost $0.14 per liter. 0.4. So, like, I guess the equivalent, it would be 14 pence per liter. 14 pence for a liter of petrol or fuel, as you might want to call it. But this is how the man was taking care of his people, his population in the country of Libya, in Africa.
Petrol prices in Libya were the lowest in the world at that time. A liter of the fluid costed just about $0.14. In adherence to the Sharia law in Islam, there were no interests charged on loans, and prices of basic commodities in Libya were extremely low to ensure that no one lacked anything or went to bed hungry. When anyone wanted to buy a car, the government subsidized its price 50%. Great, isn't it?
Did you hear that one? So you're going to buy yourself a nice new car, the government pays half. But this is the wicked man, right? This is the wicked man who, you know, the West had to get rid of because he was killing his own people. Isn't that the story that we always hear? He had to be, they had to come in, NATO had to come in and defend the Libyan people against Muammar Gaddafi. This is a sick, sick world.
Graduates received an unemployment fee from the government for use until they could find a job. We would like to reiterate again that since Gaddafi took to power till now, oil has been the main resource in the hands of the Libyan Arab nation. The triumph of the
I can't let that one go past. You see, because in the UK, I know in America it's a little bit different, but in the UK they like to boast about their welfare state, and that, you know, people here can get the dole, or what's another way of unemployment benefit, you see? But did you hear what was just said in Gaddafi's Libya? Let's listen to it again, because it's important, you see?
Great, isn't it? Graduates received an unemployment fee from the government for use until they could find a job.
Oh.
We would like to reiterate
again. You graduated from college or university, you haven't got a job, the government gives you money until you get a job. Sounds to me like unemployment benefit. It sounds to me like Libya was a welfare state where they took care of the population. Muammar Gaddafi made sure of that.
That since Gaddafi took to power till now, oil has been the main resource in the hands of the Libyan Arab nation. The triumph of the 1969 revolution marked a paradigm shift, moving the new government to use its oil income to boost redistributive measures among the population, generating a new model of economic and social development for the country. Some analysts have reported that amongst the numerous strategies for economic sovereignty which drove Gaddafi's policies were the nationalization of various Western oil companies such as British Petroleum and the creation of the National Oil Corporation, which characterized
British Petroleum, BP, was chucked out of Libya. See, again, I'm going back now to Ibrahim Traore, you see, throwing out the French, denying them the cheap gold anymore, denying them the cheap oil, denying them all of these things that they've been taking out of the country almost without any payment. See, it's been done before. And remember, Muammar Gaddafi was in power for 45 years. But did the enemy give up? No, no. He tried to assassinate him under Reagan. He tried to assassinate him under Clinton. They tried to assassinate him over the years, but eventually they got him under Obama. So it's just important for us as a people trying to extricate ourselves from the web of deceit of the Western world, that we don't get tired, that we don't get weary, that we don't get complacent and start thinking that we've arrived because we see a little bit of progress taking place. We got to push harder than ever. And we got to stay ahead of this demon who will always be there with his machinations trying to undo whatever it is that we're trying to do for ourselves. I hope you've got that message, family, because this is really what I wanted to get across.
Configuration of a more socialist model. Within the Libyan state, Gaddafi dealt with two central dilemmas, which were fully a characteristic of the country. The first was the difficulty to exercise control over all the tribes of Libya, and secondly, the fragmentation of the country into diverse, opposite tribal and regional groups.
Gaddafi the last time I'm going to stop it, and then we're going to close out. But I've got to say this. I know some of you will get upset, but I've just got to tell you the truth. You see this tribalism thing? We got to put a stop to this, family. See, you see, we're family. We are a nation. But once we allow these little tribal differences and tribal divisions to enter into the equation where we think that tribe is more important than nation, that's how the enemy comes in, man. He comes to one tribe and sets that tribe against the other tribe, and before you know it, the whole thing is just finished. Gaddafi, while he was living and while he was in power, he brought all the tribes together. He managed to unify that nation that had so many tribes. And this is what we've also got to do in the broader continent of Africa. Because right now, so many of us are steeped in tribalism to the degree that, you know, we won't mix with another brother or sister from another tribe. And this is hurting us as a people. And don't think that we haven't got tribes in the West here where we live. Some of us killing each other because we're wearing the wrong color. Still that nonsense going on, Bloods and Crips and different groups, that postcode wars among Black people, tribes. Come on, man. We got to wake up, family. We've got to wake up, because as long as we continue to do this stuff, the enemy is absolutely laughing while we continue to die at our own hands.
Strategies for economic sovereignty, which drove Gaddafi's policies, were the nationalization of various Western oil companies such as British Petroleum and the creation of the National Oil Corporation, which characterized the configuration of a more socialist model. Within the Libyan state, Gaddafi dealt with two central dilemmas, which were fully a characteristic of the country. The first was the difficulty to exercise control over all the tribes of Libya, and secondly, the fragmentation of the country into diverse, opposite tribal and regional groups. Gaddafi had the ability to hold together these tribes, with little connection to each other. It is estimated that there are about 140 tribes in Libya, with different traditions and origins. Internationally, Gaddafi worked to strengthen ties with neighboring countries such as Egypt, Morocco, Syria, Tunisia, Chad, and many others, as well as maintaining close bonds with France and Russia. Pan-Arabism cannot be excluded from the list of Gaddafi's achievements in Libya and the world. He confronted Western nations such as the US and reached closer ties with other Arab countries to carry out common practices of rejecting Washington's policies on the Middle East and Africa, though with limited power. Gaddafi also connected Libya to Latin American countries such as Venezuela and Cuba, which made him accumulate an extensive network of contacts. This, however, created an uncomfortable influence for Europe and the United States. By the time of Gaddafi's assassination, Libya had the highest GDP per capita and life expectancy in Africa. Fewer people lived below the poverty line than in the Netherlands. Many of Gaddafi's supporters continued to laud his administration for the creation of an almost classless society through domestic freedom. A regime that combated homelessness, ensuring access to food and safe drinking water, and a dramatic improvement in education. They also applaud his moves in medical care, praising the universal free health assistance provided under Gaddafi's administration, with diseases like cholera and typhoid being contained and life expectancy raised. The name Jamahiriya was given by Gaddafi himself, meaning the state of masses. Throughout his long rule of over 42 years, Gaddafi defended his position against oppositions and coup attempts that emerged from both the military and the general population. He reacted to these threats on one hand by maintaining a careful balance of power between the forces in the country, and by brutal suppression on the other. Libya under Gaddafi was not entirely hellish, as the world has been made to believe. Throughout Gaddafi's tenure in Libya, ambitious social programs were launched in areas of education, health, housing, public works, amongst others, as you have just watched in this video. These policies led to a substantial improvement in the living conditions of Libyans, from being one of the poorest countries in Africa in 1969 to being the continent's leader in Human Development Index in 2011.
Family, I hope you get it. I really do. I really hope you understand the link between what we've just watched and what's happening today in 2024, and how we've got to learn from history, learn from the past, and also how we've got to push beyond where we went in the past, and how, you know, we are on the cusp of genuine and real freedom. But the enemy is a wicked enemy, and the enemy don't play, the enemy don't rest, the enemy don't sleep. We can't lay down and rest and sleep, okay? We've got to be, in terms of our personal growth and development, in terms of our self-improvement, in terms of our righteousness, man, we got to take it to a whole different level. And so, family, I thank you. I hope that you got something out of this evening. Sister Claudia, a lot of messages have come through, but we've kind of gone a little bit beyond our time, but just suffice to say, just to thank everybody. Good to see Linda Johnson. Yep, we did your breakdown of the Planet of the Apes. We hope that you've watched it, that you viewed it, and that you enjoyed it. And, you know, just to say thank you to all of the other brothers and sisters who have joined us this evening.
And also, just to add, because there was a comment about talking about what's going on in the world, don't forget to tune in to the Final Call radio. The minister, although he's done these lectures years ago, are very relevant.
Very relevant today.
And you can subscribe to the Final Call newspaper, where you will get up-to-date news from there, also the truth of really what's going on in the world. So please subscribe to the Final Call radio, the Final Call newspaper, and listen to the Final Call radio. And don't forget, there was a brilliant lecture by student minister Ismail Muhammad last week. The remembrance of Allah is the greatest force. I do suggest you rewatch that or watch it. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But don't forget, keep feeding ourselves the spiritual guidance from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Study the Holy Quran, because the Holy Quran is a book of the future, also of the past, but everything what is happening is in that Holy Quran and the Bible. So keep studying, keep feeding yourselves.
It's all in the books. It's all in the books.
It's all there. So that's why you will be able to see, so this is why this is happening. It's all in the books. It's written for us, but we just need to dust those books off.
Sister Paulette Grant says, electricity now is like having a mortgage. Exactly.
Absolutely, very true. And yes, Sister Celestine Mohammed, yes, you're right. In this country, students have that large debt and they can't even get a job and they can't get any help from the governments here. So you're absolutely right. But thank you all for tuning in once again. Have a blessed evening or afternoon or morning, wherever you are on the planet Earth. Stay safe, and thank you all for tuning in. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, beloved. Wa alaikum salam. Salam alaikum, family. Take care.